Hello there. Today, Tropic of Cancer by Henry Miller. Of all of the books I've read, this book has had the most effect on my life, for good and for bad. It has affected my life the most. I will explain a little bit later. Tropic of Cancer. Now hailed as an American classic, Tropic of Cancer, Henry Miller's masterpiece, was banned as obscene in this country, America, for 27 years after its first publication in Paris in 1934. Only a historical court ruling that changed American censorship standards, ushering in a new era of freedom and frankness in modern literature, permitted the publication of the first volume of Miller's famed mixture of memoir and fiction, which chronicles with unapologetic gusto the bawdy adventures of a young expatriate writer, his friends and the characters they met in Paris in the 1930s. Tropic of Cancer is now considered, as Norman Mailer said, one of the 10 or 20 great novels of the century. Yes, that's fine, but what is the novel about? As in the blurb on the back of the book, it is about Henry Miller's life. He wrote about his own experiences in Paris. He was desperately poor. He only survived by throwing himself on the mercy of his friends. He never had any money. He had a couple of jobs here and there just to keep himself alive so he wouldn't starve. But for the most part, Henry Miller survived in Paris by telling people that he was a writer and asking if he could live with them, asking if he could borrow money. Yes. Why did he leave America? Well,
vous êtes né à Brooklyn et vous avez quitté l'Amérique pour aller vivre à Paris, d'abord pendant une dizaine d'années, et ensuite vous êtes retourné. Et vous êtes revenu vous établir en Amérique. Oui. Et la première question qui me vient à l'esprit, elle est double. Pourquoi êtes-vous parti? Pourquoi êtes-vous revenu?
C'est facile à répondre, je crois. Je suis parti parce que il m'est incapable de vivre en Amérique. Et j'étais plein de désespoir. Comme écrivain, je n'avais pas de chance, il me semble.
He left the United States to travel to Paris, produce a landmark, explosive work of literature. He wanted to write the great novel. As far as I'm concerned, he succeeded completely. Tropic of Cancer is unlike any other novel that I have ever read. It is so fresh, it is so vibrant, it is so moving, it is so swift, it is so full of energy and life. It makes me feel good to read it, even when he's writing about absolute squalor and poverty and starving, being at the end of your rope, not knowing where the next meal is going to come from. He writes about it with such excitement. You know, like a lot of people, they talk about these self-help books and these personal improvement books, but Tropic of Cancer makes me feel happy to be alive. Like it's radiating from the pages. Henry Miller, it amazes me that he had the patience and the diligence to sit down and write it, because you could just sense that this man was so full of vigor and so full of energy that like he must have had to handcuff himself to the chair just to sit and write it, because you could just feel this amazing love of life and existence coming from these pages. It is really, I consider it a masterpiece. Sorry, I think I asked what is the book about? The book is about Henry Miller living in Paris, being very poor, being very desperate, and somehow hanging around with a bunch of degenerates like his own personal inclination. There are quite a lot of episodes with prostitutes. That is a reoccurring motif. But that is not all. There's it's just one episode after another, like little short vignettes about, okay, now he is living with this character. He's living with this Russian, Boris, and Boris has these peculiarities about his personality. And then somehow he's over here now and he's living with these characters, and this is the certain odd, weird situation that he happens to find himself. One of the really nice bits, I don't know why I enjoy it so much. At one point he gets a job as an ESL teacher, but not in Paris, in Dijon. He travels down to Dijon to work as a teacher in like a private boys' school. When he gets there, he realizes that they will only be paying his food and board. They won't be giving him any money. So he ends up being trapped for a while at this private boys' school. And because he doesn't really give a shit about teaching English or his job, because they're not paying him any money, he just teaches them whatever he likes. According to the book, he becomes one of the most popular teachers at the school, which is not hard to imagine if you've ever seen an interview with Henry Miller, because he is just, like, the only interviews that exist are when he is quite an old man, but even at 70 years of age, you can just see that he is still so animated. It restores your faith in humanity when there are people like Henry Miller about.
That's true, Ben. And yet, we don't get very far nourishing that idea. This is something I'm always against, if I may say so, to regard people as just folks. It's nice and folksy to talk that way, you know, and it means let us be warm and let us be sympathetic and all that. True enough. But do you know that sometimes, and I think even very saintly men have the desire, and they act on it too. They goad people. They have to give them a nudge. They have to give them a poke. They have to jab them to awaken them, do you see? They do that out of kindness, and they do that to make them aware of themselves, of their potentialities. There is nothing mean about or contemptuous in it, you see, but it's only to make everyone realize what he is potentially capable of. Most of us are living far below our potential, you see, and when we say just folks, we mean that, I think. All those people who are living below the horizon line, you might say, who haven't come up. They're there like a soft cushion on which we're all comfortably floating, do you see? It's true, folks, the people are what supports us, do you know? The people who do the dirty work, who are, again, without name, without honor, and so on. It's they who are doing the work of the world.
Henry Valentine Miller was born in 1891 in New York City and spent most of his life in Brooklyn, Paris, and Big Sur, California. His books include Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, the Rosy Crucifixion trilogy, Sexus, Plexus, and Nexus, Black Spring, yes. He died in 1980. Tropic of Cancer was published in 1934 in Paris. When it comes to literature, I always look at 1934 because of Tropic of Cancer. I look at it as existing before 1934 and what came after 1934. And sometimes if I read a book which seems very, classic style, moderate, I always check the date to see like where it stands. Was it something that was published before Tropic of Cancer or after? Because I think that with this book, Henry Miller changed the world of literature. People talk about Ernest Hemingway. He pioneered this new form, the iceberg theory. 90% is hidden below the surface. You only see the top 10%, and you have to do a lot of inferring about what might be hidden. Yes. Everybody loves the whole Hemingway stripped down style. But Henry Miller, I feel, invented a new genre of literature. Like I do not know anything that resembles Tropic of Cancer. It is so singular. It is so unique. The voice is so unusual. Yes, he is writing about himself. It is semi-autobiographical or quite autobiographical. How much of it is true? I don't think we can ever really know exactly. Oh, by the way, Henry Miller was born in 1891 and Ernest Hemingway was born in 1899. I cannot get it into my mind that Henry Miller was 8 years older than Hemingway. Hemingway always seemed to be the grand old man. He was the father of the lost generation, and Henry Miller came after the lost generation. But in fact, Henry Miller was the older of the two. In 1934, the same year that Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer was published in Paris, the same year that F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel Tender is the Night was published. Tender is the Night is amazing, by the way. It's coming up on our list, so I won't say anything about it right now. The Postman Always Rings Twice was published in 1934. Such as My Beloved by Morley Callahan. Agatha Christie had a pile of novels published. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Robert Graves published I, Claudius. That's also on the list of the Modern Library, and I'm dreading speaking about that one. Graham Greene, It's a Battlefield. I've never heard of that one. Oh, Appointment in Samara by John O'Hara. Appointment in Samara is... Have we spoken about that one already? See, today we're on number 50 of the list, so I can't really remember which one we've spoken about and which ones we haven't. But Appointment in Samara is brilliant novel. Completely love that novel. George Orwell, Burmese Days. Bruno Schulz, The Street of Crocodiles. I've heard of that one. Street of Crocodiles. Oh yeah. The big book reviewer on YouTube talked about that one. You know, the big guy. Irving Stone, Lust for Life. I've seen that one, but every single like thrift store, junk store, charity shop, they always seem to have a copy of Lust for Life. And I always pick it up and I look at it and I think, it's a biography of Van Gogh. And then I put it back. I never buy it. Yves Lenoir, Handful of Dust. We're going to talk about that one as well. Nathaniel West, A Cool Million. So 1934 was an absolute behemoth when it came to literature. Some of those novels, like Tender is the Night, Appointment in Samara, Tropic of Cancer, Burmese Days, like this is an absolute flood of incredible literature, all in one single year. Unfortunately for Henry Miller, Tropic of Cancer was banned for 30 years in America. Unavailable. If you wanted to get a copy of Tropic of Cancer, you had to go to France to buy one and smuggle it back in. And if they caught you at the border, I'm sure they were not happy to discover that. So Henry Miller lived in Paris from 1930 until I think 1939. And I believe he went to Greece for a year and he spent time with Lawrence Durrell, another amazing writer, and they had a very close friendship for a long time. Eventually, Henry Miller, because of the war and because of the rise of Hitler and Nazism in Germany, Henry Miller went back to America and had a look around to see if he could reacquaint himself with his country. I think that for the most part, he found it very disagreeable. Regardless, he settled in Big Sur, California, where he began to work on his enormous trilogy, The Rosy Crucifixion. If you've ever seen it, it's 3 huge books, 500 pages each. And they're good, and it's very much Henry Miller's thing, but it's not, like nothing comes close to Tropic of Cancer. Even Tropic of Capricorn, you think might be a good companion piece, but I read that a few years ago and I was very disappointed. Let's not speak about that. So imagine if you're Henry Miller and it's 1942 and you're living in Big Sur, California, and you would like to buy a copy of your own best novel in your home country. And you can't because it's banned, it's forbidden, it's prohibited. And it would not be acceptable until 1964. He had to live in his own country for more than 20 years before he could buy his own novel. It's heartbreaking, isn't it? But there were some illicit copies of Tropic of Cancer going around. Very notably, Jack Kerouac, hugely influenced by Henry Miller. And you could see it. If you read them back to back, if you read Tropic of Cancer and you read On the Road, you can see that Jack Kerouac is really getting the Henry Miller vibe. And Henry Miller, he was there in Paris, the jazz age. He was in that world where things were changing in Europe. You know, in Europe, there was a lot more sexual openness than in America. In America, it tended to be far more conservative sexually than Europe. Today, has it changed? I do not know. I can only look in my own Canadian backyard, but I think Europeans are just a lot more sincere about the role that sex plays in our lives, whereas in North America, Canada, we try to pretend that we are not so sexually driven, my opinion, of course. So when I was a young man and I was exploring the world of literature and I was looking for writers who really resonated with me, and I was quite struck by Bukowski, this crass, seedy world that he existed in, prostitutes and alcoholism. After Bukowski, I discovered Kerouac. It took me a little while, but eventually I got there and I read On the Road and I said, no, this is miles better than Bukowski. Bukowski, you know, he's a little bit of he's a scumbag, right? And Kerouac is more, you sense that he's more spiritual, trying to get into the harmony and the sympathy of people and society. You can sense that Kerouac is searching for a kinship with his American brethren. And then I discovered Henry Miller, and Henry Miller was the voice that spoke to me the truest. Even though Henry Miller is quite a degenerate, it must be said. Henry Miller, there is a beautiful honesty about the fact that he refused to work unless it was absolutely the last alternative to staying alive, that working was something he refused to do because writing was all he wanted to do. I think that is the attitude that a real artist must accept. Everything is secondary compared to the art. Everything. You have to sacrifice it all to produce the truest work of art. Maybe that's why I haven't published a novel yet. This is on the first page. It is now the fall of my second year in Paris. I was sent here for a reason I have not yet been able to fathom. I have no money, no resources, no hopes. I am the happiest man alive. Let's listen to the great man himself read those same words.
It is now the fall of my second year in Paris. I was sent here for a reason I have not yet been able to fathom. I have no money, no resources, no hopes. I am the happiest man alive. A year ago, 6 months ago, I thought that I was an artist. I no longer think about it. I am. After Clichy, I moved into the Villa Sura, where I had a studio and some real comforts. The street itself was famous for harboring many well-known painters, sculptors, musicians.
If you've been watching the channel, you've heard me talk about how I strongly dislike flowery writing. I can't stand it. It's hard for me to explain why I like Henry Miller so much, because Henry Miller's writing is not flowery, but it is very, like, I don't know what to call it. I mean, it's like sometimes it seems like somebody's given him like some, drugs that make you go really fast, and they gave him the world's fastest typewriter, and he just said, all right, here we go. I'll read you a little bit. Oh, this is a bit for when he goes to Dijon to teach at the boys' school. All the way to Dijon, I got reminiscing about the past. I thought of all the things I might have said and done, which I hadn't said or done, in the bitter, humiliating moments when just to ask for a crust of bread is to make yourself less than a worm. Stone sober as I was still smarting from those old insults and injuries. All over the States, I wandered into Canada and Mexico, the same story everywhere. If you want bread, you've got to get into harness, get into lockstep, all over the earth, a gray desert, a carpet of steel and cement. Production, more nuts and bolts, more barbed wire, more dog biscuits, more lawnmowers, more ball bearings, more high explosives, more tanks, more poison gas, more soap, more toothpaste, more newspapers, more education, more churches, more libraries, more museums. Forward. Time presses. The embryo is pushing through the neck of the womb, and there's not even a gob of spit to ease the passage. A dry, strangulating birth. Not a wail, not a chirp. Salut au monde. Salute of 21 guns, bombinating from the rectum. I wear my hat as I please, indoors or out, said Walt. That was a time when you could still get a hat to fit your head, but time passes. To get a hat that fits your head now, you have to walk to the electric chair. They give you a skull cap, a tight fit, what? But no matter, it fits. You have to be in a strange country like France, walking the meridian that separates the hemispheres of life and death, to know what incalculable vistas yawn ahead. The body electric, the democratic soul, flood tide. Holy Mother of God, what does this crap mean? The earth is parched and cracked. Men and women come together like broods of vultures over a stinking carcass to mate and fly apart again. Vultures who drop from the clouds like heavy stones. Talons and beak, that's what we are. A huge intestinal apparatus with a nose for dead meat. Forward without pity, without compassion, without love, without forgiveness. Ask no quarter and give none. More battleships, more poison gas, more high explosives, more gonococoki, more streptococoki, more bombing machines, more and more of it, until the whole fucking works is blown to smithereens and the earth with it. I think Henry Miller was some kind of a saint, and we just didn't recognize him. As I said at the beginning of the video, Tropic of Cancer affected me more than any other book. And it was because when I was living in Ottawa in the 1990s, things were not really going well for me. I was doing okay, but I wanted to be a writer. I still want to be a writer. And I felt that if I had stayed in Ottawa, I was never going to write anything good. Like Ottawa in the 90s felt like a small town. Even though it's the capital of Canada, it has a very small town feeling. It may have changed since then, but I doubt it very much. I think that it probably still feels that way. Because I was having some problems in my life that we should not speak about, the best thing for me to do would be to leave Ottawa and to start fresh again from scratch. I thought I'll move to Vancouver or I'll move to Halifax. The West Coast, the East Coast, doesn't matter as long as there's a big ocean beside me. And then I had this epiphany. I said, well, Grant, you want to be a writer. Where do the writers go to get that deep culture, to get the serious cultural appreciation? Where have artists always gone? They go to Europe. But I didn't want to go to Paris because I felt that it was probably too expensive, if I'm being honest. So I took a plane on January the 2nd, 2000, if anybody's young watching this, there was this enormous paranoia in 1999 about Y2K. Everybody thought that all of the computers would just New Year's Eve, December 31st, 11:59, and all of a sudden the whole computer system would be fucked. That was one theory, which really, in North America, we're very paranoid, nervous people. Anyway, I flew on January the 2nd, and I landed in Lisbon, Portugal on January the 3rd. And it was because of this book. It was because of Tropic of Cancer, not only, but one of the big reasons that I decided to leave Canada. The safety, the comfort, speaking English, using Canadian money, going to job interviews and getting the job because it's Canada. And to throw that all away, all of the expected things, throw them out the window and start from nothing in a country where I don't speak the language. I won't tell you right now about my big European adventure. I'll save that for a later video. When I get to 1,000 subscribers, I'll tell you about Europe. And I tried to keep that Henry Miller attitude of being positive, being curious, not the prostitution, but everything aside from that. The whole joy of being alive, saying yes to everything, trying to be, by nature, I'm very introverted. But trying to ignore that and be as extroverted and as friendly as possible. I'm not particularly friendly by nature either. I'm reserved, I'm prickly, people tell me I'm quite aloof. I'm really not aloof, they think that. I'm actually, I'm just a little bit shy. I can't tell you the extent of how much it has affected me. And sometimes when I get down, sometimes when I get a bit depressed, I pick it up and it's so full of this joyful exuberance about being alive. Not alive and rich, not alive and comfortable, just the raw human animal element of being alive. How fantastic it is to wake up in the morning, to open up your eyes and to see the world again one more time, like for one more hour and another hour after that how blissful it is to be alive, because it's so short. And when it's over for longer than you can even comprehend. When life is finished, it is over for infinity. If that doesn't scare the shit out of you, nothing will. Every hour should be a joyful expression. That is what I get from Henry Miller. Like it really touches me very deeply on the soul. All right, I've talked long enough. I'll end the video with a bit of an interview from Henry Miller, and there will be a link below to that interview because it's just fantastic. Like even as a 70-year-old man, he still just has it. He has that magic. I'm sorry I'm gushing so much, but I can't help it. I know there are problems with Tropic of Cancer. There's stuff that people can point their finger and criticize. Yes, that is true. There are problematic elements, but I don't give a shit. The good so far outweighs the bad. I can happily forgive the bad because of all the good. Perhaps that's wrong. I'll leave a comment below though. Yes, and while we get to that point, please subscribe to the channel. Please click like. Please leave a comment below. Tell me how you feel about Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Tell me why. It's okay, you're not going to hurt my feelings. It's a 90-year-old novel. We can discuss it for good, for bad. C'est la vie. C'est la vie, as Henry Miller would have said. Okay, thank you very much for watching. My name is Grant. This is Grant Loves Books. Have a wonderful goddamn day and read Tropic of Cancer.
And one day I did quit. I quit like that. Just came in the office one morning. There were 40 or 50 applicants for messenger jobs, and I had my assistant. I said, you tell the boss I'm quitting, and I don't want my salary. That was 2 weeks out. I don't want anything. I want to get out. And I walked out with a little briefcase with my, I never forget, I walked up Broadway feeling like the happiest man on earth, that I'm no longer going to work for anybody. That was my idea. Now I'm going to write, do you see? But that was a beautiful walk, looking at all these poor bastards who are working, struggling, selling things, and buying things, you know? But then began my 10 years of misery, you know, trying then to sell my work. But as I say, this desire to write must have been strong in me from way back, you know. But I had no confidence in my ability to write. That was the thing. I had absolutely no confidence. Very strange thing.
Appointment in Samara by John O'Hara. Funny thing is that one of my closest friends from high school, like the one who gave me that literature hunger in the very beginning, his name is Jason. Even though he was the same age as me, like he was already miles ahead of me when it came to literature. Like he was the one who, gave me these books of poetry by Bukowski, and he said, "Here, read this. This poetry's amazing." God damn, I've never read anything like that before. Bukowski's poetry, he does have some good stuff. Too much, though. Way, way, way too much. But, like if you go through it, you are going to find some, diamonds. I gave this friend of mine, Jason, I gave him Tropic of Cancer, and he came back and he said, "No, I don't like this." Because we had been in agreement in everything. He and I, we were 19 years old and we both read Dead Souls by Gogol. Because we were just we were literature fanatics. We just couldn't get enough of it, and we had no direction. We just had to go to the bookstore and hunt for books, and if we found something we thought was good, we would read it. And he found Dead Souls, he read it, he gave it to me, he said, "You've got to read this." I read it, this 600-page crazy Russian novel, really trying to inspire one another and to read as much as possible. What did I read? I read A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, and I gave it to him, and I said, "Here, you've got to read this." I don't know why the Russians, but I don't know, maybe there's a Canada-Russian connection in us. So I gave him Tropic of Cancer, and he came back to me, and I'll never forget what he said to me. He looked at me and he said, "This book needs chemotherapy," which is pretty good, but what do you mean? This is the greatest book ever written. I said, No, it's nonsense. And all of a sudden there was this, I couldn't believe there was this chasm that opened up between us. Like we had been fanatical about Dead Souls. Bukowski was a big thing. The Outsider by Camus was such a big thing. And I thought, he's going to love this. He'll "Oh man, you changed my life with that Henry Miller book." And he just said, no, it's nothing to me. It's something in you. Like it's in your blood. It's in your DNA. You have the appreciation for Henry Miller gene, or you don't have it.